Good morning, third grade. We are focusing on Math, Unit 12, Lesson 3 today. And our objective is that today we'll draw scaled bar graphs to represent data with several categories. So if you were listening to that and if you were looking at the graphs that we have right here in front of you, you'll notice that these aren't picture graphs. These are bar graphs. So we are basically doing the same thing that we were doing before in collecting data and determining an appropriate scale. But this time, instead of representing that data with picture graphs, we are representing it with bar graphs, which I know that you are familiar with. So I'll just give you a quick little reminder. We know that our horizontal bar graph, the horizon, horizontal is this direction, and our vertical bar graph is going to be up and down this direction. Horizontal, vertical. Do it with your hands. Horizontal, vertical. Okay? So in our horizontal bar graph, we have, just like every other graph that we work with, the title at the top. We have our labels. So the labels are what it is that we are talking about, which in this case is our dessert categories. And then we have our number of votes, which is our scale label, because that is what actually shows us our numbers or the scale. So you can see that the scale here, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, the scale that we're working with is 5, okay? In our vertical bar graph, it's showing the same thing. It just wants to show you what happens if you do it vertically instead of horizontally. So once again, we have our title, favorite desserts. We have our categories at the bottom now, dessert categories, pie, cake, ice cream, and cookies. Our number of votes, that's our scale label, because those are the numbers that we are working with. Our scale is 5, because you can tell we're counting by 5s, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. So if you look at this, you can see that our bar goes to our data, right? So if we look at ice cream, that is 5 votes. If we look at cake, okay, that's about 17 votes. If we look at cookies, that's right around 7 or 8 votes. Okay, so you use your scale to show that data and graph it. So if you look on to our next page, I apologize again that it zooms in so much on here, so just bear with me. We actually have the same data from the problem that we did in Unit 12, Lesson 1. So it was the gender of students in room 37. There were 20 boys and 10 girls, but this time instead of showing this data represented in a picture graph, we're showing it in a bar graph, okay? So let's look here and see. So there are, I'm going to rewrite it up here so that you can see. 20 boys and 10 girls in the classroom. So I want you to think right now in your head and tell me what type of bar graph is this, horizontal or vertical? So think for a second. Think. Look back in your book at your vocab if you need to. We know that this is a vertical bar graph because it's representing the bars up and down, okay, this direction. So boys and girls, we have our genders, our categories. We have our number of students here with our scale, okay, going vertically up and down. And our title is Gender of Students in Room 37. Think right now what our scale is based on what it is that we are counting by. So take the time to think about that by yourself. And if you said 5, you are correct because we are counting by 5s. 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. That was a great scale for this person to choose because 5 goes into 20 and 10 easily, okay? So if we want to represent 20 boys, we are going to draw our bar graph all the way up to 20. And if we want to represent 10 girls, we are going to count by 5s, 5, 10, and draw that all the way up to our 10. So you can see that each interval represents 5, 5, 5, 5. All right, if there were more kids in the class, we would need to add to our scale, add to our numbers, and add more rows, okay? And now here, if you look at this, you knew the other was a vertical, so this is a horizontal bar graph, okay? Horizontal is this direction, side to side. We have the same thing, our title, we have our categories, and then we have our scale label, and again, each interval, we're counting by 5s, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. Make sure that your 0 starts right at the very, very beginning. Okay, so instead of showing our bars going up and down like we did in the previous graph, we are showing it side to side because this is a vertical bar graph. So your bars need to go, or I'm sorry, this is a horizontal bar graph, excuse me. So your bars need to go horizontally. So for girls, we know there are 10, so we're going to skip count 5, 10. And for our boys, there are 20, so we're going to skip count and draw our bar all the way to 20. Right? So let's look at the next one together. It's asking us how many girls are in your class and how many boys are in your class. These, again, were the same questions. Here, let me see if I can turn this and if it would be easier. Yep, that works better this time. These are the same questions as before. We know that there are 12 girls in our class and 12 boys in our class. How many more girls than boys or vice versa? Well, we're finding the difference. 12 minus 12 equals 0, right? Because we have an equal amount. How would our graph change if the scale was 2 students instead of 5? So let's think about this. If we have our graph on this previous page, okay, we have our scale of 5, but it's asking, what if our scale was 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12? What are you noticing? What are you noticing about my new scale? Okay, well, if you're really looking at this and thinking, you'll see, right, that our bar graph is going to be a lot larger. It's going to go a lot higher, okay, or a lot longer because we have a smaller interval. The larger the interval, the less that you're going to have on your scale, and the shorter the bar graph is going to be, right? The smaller your interval, the smaller your scale, the larger it's going to be, okay? So if you look back at that previous problem, you'll be able to see that if our scale was changed to a 2, you would have a much either higher or longer graph for each of these. All right, I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me. All right, bye boys and girls.